As a preliminary matter, this is Larry Murphy, Chair of the Newbury Planning Board. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Planning Board members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Peter Pecos.
Yes.
George Morse.
Yes.
Woody Knight.
Yes.
Mary Stone.
Yes.
And Mary, I'm glad to welcome you to your first official meeting as a full voting member of the board. Thank you for stepping forward. We
My
all
pleasure.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Larry. Appreciate it.
Wonderful. Town staff, Martha Taylor, Planning Director.
Yes.
Rob's Assistant Town Planner.
Yes, hi.
Hi, Kristen. Anticipated speakers or presenters on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative. Steve Sawyer, GM2 Associates.
Yes.
Michael McNiff.
Yes.
Bob Griffin, Griffin Engineering Group. Bob, I assume he'll be joining us at some point.
Yeah.
From MVPC, do we have Lauren Keisling and Kayla Rennie? Or will be joining us, I believe.
They'll be joining us a little bit later,
Okay.
around 7:30.
All right, Martha, thank you. Sam Colombo, Millennium Engineering.
Yes.
Thank you. Michael Shea, Coughlin Shea Builders.
Yes.
And also Chris Coughlin from Coughlin Shea Builders. Is Chris with us?
Yes.
Too?
Yeah.
Thank you. This June 21, 2023 open meeting of the Newbury Planning Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, which extends the Governor's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 20, until March 31, 2025. This order supersedes the requirement of the Open Meeting Law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location and allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely, so long as reasonable public access is afforded to the public so that the public can follow along the deliberations of the meeting. For this meeting, the Newbury Planning Board is convened by video conference via Zoom as posted on the Planning Board's agenda, which can be found on the town's website and which identifies how the public may join. You may join us by going to http:// and entering meeting ID number 832-7141-3056, or by calling 1-929-205-6099 US, New York, and entering the meeting ID number when prompted. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that the attendees are participating by video and/or telephone conference. The meeting is also being broadcast live through local access cable channel 9 on Zoom and at www.tnctv.org, and the recording will be available on the Newbury Access YouTube channel. Meeting materials were provided to the board members prior to the meeting for review. Applicants or their representatives may be called upon to speak, and if needed, share information to the screen. Please state your intention after you have been called. For the meeting business ground rules, before we turn to the first item on the agenda, permit me to cover some ground rules for the effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. As chair, I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After speakers conclude their remarks, I will go down the list of board members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, for all attendees except board members and staff, please remember to mute your computer using your mute button or your phone to use *6 to toggle mute, unmute when you're not speaking. Please use earbuds or earphones with tablets and cell phones. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. Please be aware that video participants can see you and that you should take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. For any response, please wait until I yield the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If board members wish to engage in discussion with other members, please do so through me, taking care to identify yourself when you wish to speak. But there will be an opportunity for public comment and questions during public hearings. After board members have spoken, I will afford the public an opportunity to comment and/or ask questions as follows. I will see questions and comments through the Zoom raise hand function. For video conference participants to raise your hand, hover over the bottom of the Zoom window below the photo gallery and click on the gray hand that appears. Please ensure your name is fully and correctly displayed on the participant list. You may rename yourself by using the More function next to your name. For telephone participants to raise your hand in a Zoom meeting, hit *9 on your phone keypad. I will then allow questions and comments from members of the public who have raised their hands in the order in which they are listed, which is determined by the order in which people click on the raise hand function. Each participant will be called on to provide his or her name and address and then ask a question or make a comment. I will afford the applicant or participant his or her representative the opportunity to reply. Your hand will be lowered when you have been given the floor for your questions. I will then continue down the list of those in the raised hand column and again afford the participant, applicant, or representative an opportunity to speak. Should there be a physical or electronic submittal of questions or concerns, they will be noted for the record. And again, the participant, applicant, or representative will be afforded the opportunity to speak if the issues raised have not yet been addressed. Finally, note that each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. So then turning to the agenda, first item on the agenda under appearances and submissions, we have Steve Sawyer, GM2 Associates, submission of a common driveway special permit application, 7 Bittersweet Lane, Newbury, Mass, map U09, lot 21B. The applicant Gage Foley, 31 Pond Street, Amesbury. The owners David and Nancy Foley, 11 Bittersweet Lane, Newbury. So Steve, can you tell us what we have here?
Okay, yeah. So the project that we're proposing is to basically, currently there's an existing common drive that services 9 and 11 out there. It's basically a family, a lot that was subdivided by Dave and Nancy Foley quite some time ago, back in 1999. At that time, I think there was already an existing paved common drive that served that dwelling and also a barn in the back. The barn in the back was since raised and a single family house built in the rear. Should I share at this time?
I don't know that it's necessary.
So at this point, okay. So that the common drive servicing 9 and 11 has basically been in use for quite some time now. I believe the house. Actually, Gage is here with us. He could probably let me know when the house was built. I believe it was in the early 2000s, probably around 2003 or 4. Gage, you can jump in if I'm way off the mark there. But so since then, the common drive has serviced to them. So this lot, Gage and his wife are looking to build a house there on number 7, which was subdivided back in '99. And what we're looking to do is just add one additional lot to this existing common drive. Actually, Gage questioned me on the application fee. He was questioning why we were paying for the 3 because it's basically adding 1. He said, why wouldn't it be 150 versus a 650? I think when Martha had mentioned the fee, said, well, there was no permit for those other 2. I'm not sure if it predated. So I don't know if the board would want to take that up now and just confirm that the fee, whether the fee is 150 for adding 1 lot, or the 1 lot to the existing drive, or it would be the 650 for the 3 houses that are on this common driveway.
Has the fee been paid?
So I dropped a check off for 650, but I also have a check for 150. So I figured the worst case would be 650. I could exchange a check for the 150 if the board felt it would be the other. I just took the.
Well, I don't know that we want to touch on that tonight. If you can discuss it with Martha, and if you can't come to some accommodation, we can talk about it at the next hearing. So I think the only thing we need to do tonight is to determine if I'm sorry, Martha, go ahead.
No, just to add a little bit to that, part of the reasoning for that is that there's going to be an improvement of the entire driveway. It's being widened to bring it up to our standards. And so given that, it was my feeling that it was appropriate to actually charge for the entire, for 3.
All right, thank you, Martha. I think you got your answer, Steve, but
okay.
And I think the only thing we need to do tonight is to determine if the application is in proper form and then to pick a date for public hearing. Is that correct, Martha?
Yes.
Yeah, and you see any issues with the application?
No, we did receive the hard copies today and have received the PDFs. Kristen and I both reviewed the draft application. Haven't checked it to make sure that everything was picked up, but I think at this point it's in good shape and the board could vote to accept it and set the public hearing date if there's anything else that can be
Okay.
added as needed.
Can we do that in one motion?
I think so.
Yeah. And as far as the date goes, our regular first meeting in July is July 5th, but I'm not available on that date. So I think we may be looking at the 19th. Let me see if the board members have any issues with that. Pete, would you be,
19th is fine with me.
yeah, George,
19th is fine.
Woody,
Oh, Woody, you're muted.
you're muted.
The 19th is fine, excuse me, sorry about that.
And Mary, does that work for you as well?
It works for me, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Then I would entertain a motion to accept the application and to continue or to set the date for the public hearing for July 5th, July 19th, excuse me, at 7:15 p.m. via Zoom.
So
Do I
moved.
have a motion? Thank you, Pete. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. I think I heard Woody first. Any discussion? Hearing none. Pete, how do you vote?
Yes.
George, how do you vote?
Yes.
Woody, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mary, how do you vote?
Yes,
I vote yes as well. So thank you, Steve, and
Thank
we'll
you.
see you on the 19th.
Okay, actually, Larry, one more thing is, so for any peer review, if there is one, that would be discussed at at the opening meeting, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you can, I mean, you might want to touch bases with Martha. I think
Okay.
typically I would think we would expect a peer review. But why don't you have a discussion with Martha between now and then? See what you can
Okay.
work out. Okay,
Okay. Thank you.
very good. Thank you. Okay, it's 7:12, so we can't get in. Oh, we have the master plan update. Martha?
All right, so basically, what I wanted to do tonight really is just announce where we are. The final draft for public review is ready, it's out. We have a kind of presentation and community discussion scheduled for next Thursday, June 29th at 7 o'clock in the community room at the library. Emily will be providing, giving a brief presentation about the plan and some of the highlights, and then we'll get into a discussion about the vision statement and the goals and actions that have been outlined in the plan. Hoping to get, good, robust discussion, interactive. We'll have dots to put on boards and all that kind of stuff to identify priorities and have a wrap-up discussion about that, and all that information will get incorporated into the appendix or the implementation plan at the end of this process. We also have a questionnaire that's online for people to take a look at and answer with regard to the vision statement and setting the priorities and the different elements of the master plan, including, transportation, land use, housing, economic development, natural resources, and historic and cultural resources. And all of this, there's a link to the page that we've developed on the homepage of the website. If you go there and click here, it'll take you directly to the page where you can access both the full plan, and also we've broken it down in chapters. If somebody's particularly interested in reading natural resources, they can go directly to that. It also has links to all of the maps and a link to the questionnaire. So we're very excited that we've gotten to this point, and really hoping to have a good turnout at the meeting on the 29th, and good response to the questionnaire. That information about all of this went out on social media as well as on Facebook, Instagram. We've got some postcards going out. We'll be putting flyers up, and there will be.
Can I ask a question? Martha, may I? Did you finish?
Just one more thing. So we are going to have 3 hard copies available for people to review, one at the Council on Aging, one at the library, and one here at the clerk's counter. So it's a big document. Nobody's going to be able to sit down and go through it, really quickly, but at least it'll be there as well as the online version.
Yeah, how many pages, Martha? 200 and?
That's
how many?
about 290, not including the maps.
Okay, yeah, so it's a good read. I'm sorry, Mary, go ahead. Do you have a
No,
question?
no, I cut Martha off. Just wondering if we have a sense of what the turnout might be on for the meeting. Do we have any sense of that from past, Martha, from past history or anything?
It's hard. I mean, we had some, when we started this process, we did have some public meetings that had good turnout. We also had smaller focus groups. And there was certainly a lot of interest. We've already gotten some responses to the questionnaire. So we're just trying to get the word out as much as possible and, encourage people to check it out and to come to the meeting.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank
June
you.
29th, June 29th at 7 PM. Is that correct?
Yes, at the
Yeah,
lot.
we won't, I don't anticipate the board will be deliberating as a body, but we are going to at least post the meeting in case that, there should be some discussion back and forth. So we'll be a posted meeting.
Right, so yes, especially if there's a quorum, and you all are of course invited and encouraged to come. As a follow-up to that, Emily will be coming back to the board probably at the July 19th meeting. The questionnaire, the link to the questionnaire will be open until July 14th. And Emily will be coming back on the 19th, and we can start the discussion about adoption of the plan. Whether the board might be ready to adopt it that night or at least start talking about it. See if there are any questions.
Okay, that's great, Martha. Thank you for all your work on this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All of you, and Kristen as well.
Moving along, great, super, thank you, Martha.
I guess we can move on to our public hearings. We have 2 concurrent public hearings. These are continuances. 170 Orchard Street, map R20, lot 43A, owner applicant, the estate of Louis Bulgaris, care of Diane Yurkovich, continued from 4/19/23. Again, I think, is that correct?
Oh, I'm
4/19?
sorry, I didn't change that. I'm sorry, my fault.
It was continued from the last session of the public hearing. It's a definitive subdivision plan application for Fields Way, 170 Orchard Street. Also a common driveway special permit application for a common driveway serving 2 lots at proposed Fields Way subdivision, 170 Orchard Street. And Mary, having already welcomed you as a full voting member, unfortunately, I understand you've missed 2 of the public hearing sessions for this while you were an associate member, so you won't be eligible to vote. But your deliberations are certainly welcome. And
Thank
your
you.
thoughts on this, okay?
Thanks.
So we have 4 voting members on both of these applications. So I understand the applicant has submitted a revised feasible access plan showing a swept path analysis for the Lot 4 driveway. I believe that was discussed at the last meeting. Also a revised aerial photo with new lot configurations and easements shown, as well as the revised easement for 168 Orchard Street. So if we could just have the applicant present these new submissions, please.
Yep, that's me. My name is Sean McDonald with Griffin Engineering. I can share my screen here with you guys. Let's see. Oops. Bear with me here.
Here's our agenda.
Okay. So this is can you guys hear me?
Yes,
I can hear you fine.
Okay. This is the updated aerial, which was requested by the board. It shows the most recent changes with the lot lines. And also the driveway was modified from the last submission for number 168. I can show the, are there any questions about the aerial plan, or I can show the turning analysis for the common driveway or the feasible access plan?
I don't have any questions. Any other board members have any questions on this plan?
No,
Oh, hearing none, I guess you can turn to the other.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so this is the turning analysis which was performed for this curve. I think this one curve was in question. It shows that the tanker truck will be able to turn across for the lot 4 driveway. So it's sufficient in the turning radius. This driveway, this entrance was widened slightly to accommodate it. Other than that, there's really no other changes that were made for this hearing. The plans have remained the same.
Has the fire department seen this? Do we know?
They,
Yep, go ahead, Martha, sorry.
I was going to say, I did send them the previous, or the earlier version, didn't get any feedback from them. But, and they have not seen this one.
Okay. Thank you. How about the board members? Pete, do you have any questions about this plan?
Could we just zoom out on this a little, just so we can get the, no, zoom out? Right. Okay, so, okay, yep, no, I do not, and the fire has not seen this. Okay,
No, they haven't.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you. George, anything?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Woody, do you have anything?
no questions at this time. Thank you.
Mary, do you have anything?
No questions, thanks, Larry.
Okay, thank you. I guess you can take that down. Martha or Kristen, or both of you, I know you've been in contact with Essex Greenbelt. Anything new on that front? I know that there's been some discussion back and forth.
Yeah, Kristen sent the most recent plans and the aerial photograph, and we've had some communication with Maggie Brown, and I think they do have some concerns about the agricultural access and some thoughts on what might improve it with some buffering and other things. So one of the things that they've suggested is it might be very helpful to go out there and do another site visit with this plan. Looking at the current configuration.
Okay,
So I think one of the concerns was the way it's shown right now with the agricultural access going to, the side of the common driveway, as it appears that there might be some need to go through wooded areas, and they certainly don't want to disturb those. So again, their thought is to go out there and do another site visit.
do you have any suggested dates for site visit?
Did not discuss it with them, so I think if it's all right with everybody, we could communicate with Essex County Greenbelt and get some proposed dates and then put them out if any of the board members want to attend, and obviously Mr. McNiff and Sean or Bob.
Is that okay with the applicant? You good with that?
I think
Sure.
that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay, great.
I thought Bob was creating two ways to get Sean both off to the first field and the second field. So that it was designed not to touch any woods at all.
Yeah, so there's an easement on the lot for, I can pull up my screen again and I can show it. Let's see. Oops.
So it looks like on coming in across lot 3 and lot 4, there's a wooded area there that they're going to have to go through right at the beginning.
Yes,
And
yeah.
And farther to the north.
The aerial would be most helpful for this.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now. Here we go. Can you guys see that?
There we
Yes.
go.
Okay. So I think the area that's in question is down here. Mike, this easement, this part here is all the easement, for it's agricultural access easement, which will be used for that purpose. So the common drive will be, the paved area, and then this will be a separate access to the next to the common driveway. There'll be another easement over this area of lot 3 to get through this area here.
So Larry, Martha, was the concern that they're worried about this disturbing this forested area that's in place right now?
Yes, so I think both at the entry, and I know that's already gone before conservation.
It
and
has.
then Yeah, also as you go farther left on the plan, there are a couple of areas that it could be, potentially tight with the tractor getting past there. So I think they would just like an opportunity to look at that on the ground and, also talk about some potential buffering.
Martha, can I ask a question? The plan that shows that the 2 driveways work, is that the plan that gets approved, or was that just to prove that it works and we go back to the plan that was submitted for the common driveway?
So for the common driveway, because you're creating lots here, you need to be able to show that you have viable access across the frontage for each of those lots. And given the configuration of the lots where the frontage is, it gets very narrow and tight. We just needed to make sure that in fact the driveways can work. But that's the first step in the common driveway process.
So the plan that will get approved, God willing, the plan that would be before the board would be the previous plan showing the original common driveway.
Well, not as
No.
originally drawn, but as drawn consistently with the feasibility plan. But to answer your question, which I think your question is, are we talking about 2 driveways or a common driveway? I think it's the common driveway that's under consideration by the board. Again, as Martha said, this feasibility plan is just sort of, think of it as a jurisdictional requirement before we can consider the common driveway. I hope that answers your question.
It does. It just, and pardon me for being redundant, and I pardon for asking a question.
No, sorry. It's,
Have the answer.
Right,
But
that's okay. I mean, there are 2 applications before the board. So we've got the subdivision plan and then we've got the common driveway special permit plan. And they go hand in hand, but you still need to get the final lot configuration and the frontage and all of that. And that all needs to kind of work together.
So the plan that shows that it's feasible is the one that would get approved.
with the common driveway.
Okay. That answers your question.
I believe that should be the lot configurations should comply with the feasibility plan. But nevertheless, instead of 2 parallel driveways, you would see 1 common driveway.
Yep. Okay, I understand. Great.
Do you
thank
agree with that, Martha?
Yeah.
Okay.
Larry?
Yeah. Who
Uh,
spoke? Oh, Woody, go ahead.
Woody, yes. I have a question for Martha or a clarification. You said Greenbelt wants to do a site walk here, right?
Yes, that was their suggestion. I thought it would be
Okay.
helpful.
Okay, and I agree then that would be helpful. So now my question / comment, has it been planted yet? Has this been planted by Mr. Herrick?
Good question. I don't know that.
Because if it's planted in corn already or it's about to, it's gonna be kind of hard for them to see what's actually going on as far as any markers that they may put out there to show where the access is to lot 4 and lot 3 in the driveway, because that'll all be corn.
I'm not sure if it's been planted yet.
I saw it 2 weeks ago. It had not been planted at that time, but I have not been out there in 2 weeks.
When would they typically plant the corn?
I've seen other pieces of his going in now, and they're all about an inch or two high, so he's been in the neighborhood, and he's been over in Raleigh and some of his other pieces, so now's the time. So I suspect that it's probably already planted, but I haven't looked myself. You can't quite see it.
Right.
We can
We do-
report them all, Martha.
All right, we do have an abutter with his hand raised who might be able to answer the question. Mr. Chair, I don't know if you'd like to recognize him.
Sure.
So I assume it's Peter Mack.
Yes, yes. Sorry, I had the wrong button there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I can confirm it has been planted. And I don't know if you can see my video or not. It seems my camera might be screwed up, but maybe not. If so, I'm sorry. I can also confirm at the base of the circle here, where the entrance for
Oh.
the,
Looks like we may have lost him.
are you there?
I can hear you, Peter.
Well,
Okay, so at the base of the circle here, that's actually not wooded area. It's just field that hasn't been cut or developed in years. So this shouldn't be an issue for Greenbelt with regards to deforestation, if you will. I just present that as an option for y'all to consider. But yes, the field has been planted. It is a couple inches at the moment, but it certainly is navigable for inspection.
Okay, thank you, Peter.
You're welcome.
All right, so Martha, you'll work that out with Greenbelt and get, see if we can get a date together for that. At our last meeting, we had asked Martha to start sketching together a decision outline, but before we will get to that. But before we do that, I just want to ask the board members again and open it to the public if there are any questions or comments about what we have discussed so far tonight. Peter, do you have anything further?
I just have, now that we're going to be doing a site walk with Greenbelt, that's just in my mind. So I'm just going to hold on any comments at this point in time. Thanks, Larry.
Okay, thank you. George, anything on what we've discussed so far tonight?
No, I don't.
Woody, same question?
No, none at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, Mary?
no, I don't.
Okay. Martha, have we received any written comments?
No, we have not.
And do we have anyone? I see Peter Mack's hand is still raised. Is that intentional or? No, it's down now.
Apologies.
Okay, no problem. So moving on then. Is there anything further from the applicant up as far as what we've discussed so far this evening? We have a lot of other things to talk about, but just so far this evening, anything further?
We did submit a draft easement for Peter's property that included the perpetuity and not being required to join the homeowners association.
Yes, thank you. We do have that and we'll have to forward that at the appropriate time to town council for review.
I think I spoke with George about this briefly. I think this is really, it's an agreement between the applicant and the property owner. So I'm not quite sure, other than the board being satisfied that counsel for both parties have reviewed and approved it. I'm not sure what the board's role in that particular document is.
All right, the point is well taken, Martha. Okay. So Martha, turning to you again, we did ask you to do some work for this meeting, in particular to start drafting a subdivision decision outline. Can you bring us up to speed on that?
So I've started, I do have a skeleton, which I'm not sure, I haven't sent it to the board, and I don't really think that it's worth putting up on the screen right now. I did start to look at the waivers that the board had voted to basically approve at the last.
Well, it was a straw poll, wasn't?
It was a straw poll, right, that's right. And for some of them, it's not clear exactly, what the justification or explanation for those waivers is. I don't know whether the board might want to discuss those in any more detail tonight or wait on that.
Why don't you put them up if you would, please?
Okay. So. So are you able to see those?
Yes. So the first is environmental analysis. So your concern is the justification for waiver of the environmental analysis, Martha?
Well, in that one, as is noted here, the subdivision rules and regs do say that the board may waive the environmental analysis requirement on subdivisions or 5 lots or fewer. And this one is 4, so the board is, allowed to waive, or has the authority to waive that analysis. It's something that typically would probably be done, very early in the process because it's very comprehensive. So, this one, given where we are in the process, I think just noting the fact that the board is authorized to waive that, I think probably is sufficient justification, unless anybody else feels differently.
Okay, let me ask the board members. Peter, your thoughts?
I'm comfortable with it.
Yeah, George,
So am I, I'm comfortable.
Woody,
Well, I've mentioned before, I didn't understand why we were waiving an environmental analysis here, but under the circumstances being laid in the application, I'm comfortable.
okay, and Mary?
Seems fine to me.
Okay, I'll agree with the board. The general layout and dimensions required 30-foot property line radius at street intersection. If my memory serves, when we did the straw poll on this last time, Pete, you were a no vote on this. Do you want to share your concerns with us?
Sure. Is it possible to throw up an overview, either the aerial or the plan itself, Martha?
To do that, I'll have to stop sharing this,
Okay.
and then maybe Sean can pull the aerial up again, and so I will stop that.
You guys see that?
Yes.
Okay.
So, if I could, Larry, I got a couple.
Please.
Yeah, got a couple issues with this, and I think I articulated it before. Our requirement is 30 feet, Martha.
Yes.
And right now we don't have anything, which makes this a rather sharp turn in and out of the proposed street. And as I look at it as I think about it, I'm not sure if there's a way that could be achieved to make it a more gradual turn, so that we could get some marginal movement there. A couple things that have come to my mind, and they've come to it as looking at this down the road, and I actually think the aerial might be a little bit more help. Well, no, we can leave it on this. The existing drive that is in place for 168 is going to be, there's going to be an access point off this road. off this new road. However, there's no indication that the current drive will be abandoned or will continue to be abandoned in the future, whether the current resident abandons it or does not, or a future resident abandons it or does not. So I see that as a turning point issue. I see the neighboring drive, which currently exists. You can make that it opens up. It's maybe, I don't know, is that 10 feet away from the road, if that? Is it Sean?
Yes, yep.
Is that
Down
10?
here,
Yeah.
I think it's a little more than 10 feet.
So what does that look like?
It could be upwards of 20 feet.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, I don't know if anything can be done with regards to that. So I have concerns on, again, the sharp turn off Orchard, coming up Orchard, making that left. I know the police have said they don't have any concerns with it, but looking at this, and if we were to look at an image from Google Map and we were to drive up this road and see where this turn is, it's a quick stop. And if we hadn't had the opportunity to even move that pole, I don't even think I could get, in any way support this. So I have strong concerns with it. Is it possible, Sean, do you have Google Earth on it, or Martha, do you have Google Earth that could be pulled up so that we could take actually drive up this, and so everyone could get the depreciation of going up that hill and the quick left, so from Central Street?
I do have that available. If Sean, you'll have to stop sharing. It's loading. All right, you able to see it now?
Yes, so this
So
is
I'm gonna-
this is okay. So just so orientation wise, this is going, so we have 168 we just passed, which was on the right of the screen. And so this is the entrance in. So this is going down, and you can actually appreciate the rise coming up the hill. So can we go down the road, Martha? So towards Central Street?
Yep.
Yep, and you can see we're going down a hill. So when we get down to the bottom of the hill, if we can turn around and come up the hill, and I'll get the door.
Okay.
I'll try at least. So now we're going up Orchard. And so we get the nice thing about Google is you can get the visual of climbing. So we get to this, now you're at the top of the hill, and you're going to have to kind of make a very quick left turn. And as you're making that left turn, let's just stop right here. You can see that it gets flat, but you're on a corner. So you're going to have traffic coming at you. You're going to make a quick left. And if someone is coming up that hill, I see that as an issue because there isn't much room here for anything to happen with that. And then we're going to have a driveway on the, let's see, it's not 160. What is the other number, the other parcel?
This one, it's 172.
172. So we're going to have a driveway right there. So I see this as tight, and I don't know if there's any way that, this can be manipulated in a different direction so that there is more width and radius. I don't know if there's a conversation to take place with 168. So I have a couple questions with regards to this piece, and I'm not real comfortable with this piece. And I don't know if I've articulated that well enough. So yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with 168 down the road. I know that we're making a provision for it, but I don't know that anything's going to stop anything from having to drive right there in the future. And if that's the case, you're going to have drive on both sides of this thing, which I see as a problem. So that's kind of my thought process right now, Larry.
Okay, thank you, Pete. Before I turn to the applicant, George, anything you wanted to add to what Pete
I
had to
don't
say?
know. Yeah, no, thank you.
No, Woody?
Not at the moment, Larry.
Okay, Mary?
Larry, I don't really see the issue that Pete sees, but I could be better informed should others want to weigh in.
I'm sorry, you do or you do not see the issue?
I don't see the issue that Pete has raised as being valid at this point. Given what,
Okay. All right, thank you, Mary. Sean, do you want to respond, or you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so you know, that Google photo, you know, there's a lot of overgrown vegetation in that area. The proposed roadway is going to be significantly wider than what's shown in that photo. And all that vegetation is going to be cleaned up. So it's going to be a much wider opening than shown there. And the corner that it's on is actually, it'll actually give a better view because it's actually, it's concave. So you're on the outer edge of the curve. So it's, you know, if you were sitting at the end of the road, the new roadway, it would actually be easier to see down both sides of the road. And I believe there was adequate stopping sight distance going either direction we had calculated. So I think that the Google Maps photo makes it look, you know, it's overgrown. There's a lot of trees. So it will be significantly wider as built.
Is there any way you can bring this into compliance with the regulation?
So I think the problem with the regulation is the existing opening is as is. We can't, there's no way to get the 30-foot property line radius. We could increase the radius of the pavement, because those are two separate things. So the waiver is from the property line radius, not the pavement radius. If we need to make the pavement radius larger, we could, but I think we've demonstrated that the fire trucks can turn around already. They can both go in and out both directions, which seems adequate. So
I think what Martha's looking for in drafting the decision is the justification for the waiver. And why is it in the public interest? Do you have any thoughts on that?
So the waiver, let's see. Yeah, there's the property lines are what they are. We don't have the room to accommodate that waiver because there's properties on either side. So there's no that's the only justification.
Just that you need it.
Yeah.
If I
Okay.
might, I appreciate Peter's comments. It's Michael McNiff. I'm sorry to interject. That the driveway for Peter is actually on our property, so that the wooded area that you're looking at is where the driveway is going. I can't speak for Peter. I know we were trying to improve his property by giving him a driveway off of the street so they weren't two driveways next to each other. And I don't know if Peter has another driveway down the street, which I assume he's going to use. I know that straight away it shows that hill on that, but I didn't think the grades were that steep. The police did comment that the straightaways had good distances in both ends. We're obviously moving the telephone pole, which I think will be able to widen. Sean, I'm wondering, are we able to widen the curve on the shoulder? I'm sure we'd have to ask DPW if that's allowed. But why wouldn't we be able to do that if we have 8 or 10 feet of shoulder before we get to our property?
Let's see.
And thinking that if we could widen that area with a better pavement onto the road, obviously.
So are you talking about the area around the telephone pole here?
Thinking the shoulder, the telephone pole is in the layout of the road.
Yeah.
So I think that we could widen our curve where it meets the road.
Okay, yeah. So make this radius larger. Yes, we could
On
do that
both
if we needed.
On both sides, because on Peter's property, you can see his driveway is on our property, and we
Yeah.
were going to restore that with new lawn and build him a driveway on the other side.
Yeah.
I assume that's to get rid of that driveway, I assume, I hope. Would that be helpful, Peter?
So just so I can understand, we would be widening the mouth of the new road, and you would be widening it towards where the stone wall is. Is that what I'm gathering?
you know, to whatever would be allowed. I think, are we allowed, Sean, to pave wider in the layout of Orchard Street? That's the question. Do we
I
need
think,
Down to do that.
I think we could pave wider if we needed to, but I think we've demonstrated that it's enough for a fire truck. If we need to go wider, we could, but
Even if we went 5 feet wider, it doesn't look like it impacts anything.
right. Yep.
Excuse me. The telephone, that would put the telephone pole into play there, or is the telephone pole far enough away from this?
The telephone pole can move 12 feet. Our plan with the National Grid is moving at about 8 feet. But we
Okay.
didn't want to encroach on the other side. We didn't want to get too close to Jerry's, who's the, other or butter near the wall. We didn't want to make any change to his aesthetics either.
So can you drop a pin as to where the pole would be on this right now? Because I'm trying to appreciate where that would be. Is there a way to drop some sort of a,
Yeah, halfway through the 0 or near the
Yeah.
0.
It's about right here.
It's an undersized pole that they were actually going to replace at one time. It needs to be taller. With like some of the other ones they've changed on that street.
and so if this were to be widened at the mouth, how far would that travel back to?
I'm not an engineer, so I don't want to speak in front of you, Sean. I
So we,
was envisioning there's 8 or 10 feet of roadway there. How far is the shoulder from the pavement to our property? 8 or 10 feet?
I would say, yeah, about 8 or 10 feet.
Yeah, so I would think that thing could go 5 feet wider for the full 10 feet. So you bring it, I'm just looking at it from the bottom of the 1, following the outside
Yeah.
of the old driveway, the stone wall side of the old driveway, of Peter's driveway. That's Peter's driveway. We're looking.
Right here.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it goes right through those trees. Our road.
Sean, so can you draw that? Is there any way for you to take a pen right now and just kind of draw? So
Yeah.
appreciate
Let's see.
that.
I can,
Maybe drop a couple pin marks so that the board could appreciate what that would look like.
yeah, I'll try to add a couple notes here. Yikes. Let's see, I might not have the ability to do that on this machine. I can only make comments here. I mean, can you guys see my cursor?
Yes,
So I mean, we can basically start the curb cut here and then cut back. Mike is suggesting at least 5 feet over here. And it would meet, the new pavement over here, so that this would be a wider turn. Because this pole will be 8 feet towards this stone bound right here. So the pole is gonna basically split the difference. So the pole won't be in the way. And we could make that wider.
So could you, the hatch that is square, that has a square end. And we see Peter's driveway angling towards that. So if you move your cursor, bring it up to 51.5,
Over here.
right, and go above that.
Yeah.
And bring it down a little bit. And bring it down a little bit more. Can you start, can you carry that line? And now, so what you're basically doing is you're giving this a much wider approach for
Yeah.
anyone coming up the hill and into this area. That's my biggest concern, is coming up the hill. Because you're right, when you're coming from Orchard Street, going towards Central Street, there's a good line of sight. It's pretty clear, you can see it in both directions. My greater concern is coming up the hill from Central Street and then banging a left. And having a gradual enough a turn to do that, as opposed to a sharp 90-degree turn. Can you appreciate that?
Sure. And I think that's relatively, I think it's a good idea and it's easy to do. I
Okay,
think
so,
it's beneficial.
Yeah.
so Sean, are you thinking that that is something that can be dropped into a plan for the board to
Yeah,
appreciate?
yeah, we can definitely make that modification. We can make it happen. So you're
Okay.
talking about coming down from the cursor down here, taking the left up to here.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think, we've demonstrated that, the largest fire truck in Newbury can make that turn.
Right.
But
It's a hard turn. It can be
yeah,
made. But if there's something coming out of that drive, because this is what we always have to think. We always have to think of a couple pieces of big equipment moving around at the same time.
Yeah.
And then throw snow into it. Because it happens here, right? We get
Right.
snowbanks, and we get snowbanks, and all of a sudden roads become much narrower than they were. I mean, if this was Florida, you could, we wouldn't have to think that way, but I think it's important to think of public safety. Right?
Yep.
Okay, so now if you can unzoom from this. So I'd like to have some sort of assurance now that there's not going to be a driveway existing on the other side of 168 from there. And how would you go through negotiating that so that I would feel comfortable that there wasn't going to be a drive next to there? Because as I'm looking at it right now, I see a nice circular pull-through driveway coming down the path.
So are you talking about this area right here?
Right.
So
And
I know,
I think that's a conversation that you might have to have offline, and then reassure the board that that wasn't going to be the case and how you would facilitate that.
okay, yeah,
Okay.
Well, Peter's online. I mean, I think we've worked through that with Peter to give him a brand new driveway off the subdivision and to turn the driveway that he uses, which is on our property, to restore it to nice lawn. And I thought he was good with that.
Right.
I can't speak for him.
I understand what you're saying to me right now.
I'll speak to Peter. He must have jumped offline, but we'll get a letter.
And it's, it's kind of going forward because, people make driveways out of lawns very easily. And they just, because there was one there and they think there should be one there. And if there's another property owner down the road, I wouldn't want that to be a potential problem here with two driveways on either side of this now road, very close to this road.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Anything further, Pete?
No, I'm good right now. Thanks very much, Larry.
George, anything further on this subject?
No.
No. Woody, same question.
No,
Mary?
No, very informative discussion though. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it is. You've frankly, Peter, got me thinking about things I hadn't thought about before,
Yep, yep.
which is why we have 5 members on the board. Martha, I think we can probably take this down and put the waivers back up.
Sure.
Although Martha, I still don't think we've answered the question about the justification for it, but we can continue to work on this.
I mean, I think with discussion about the modification of the pavement radius that addresses, I think, some of the reasoning behind the property line radius. So it's kind of an accommodation, which I think I could write that.
You can work with that?
I can work with that.
Yeah, okay. How about the street location minimum width of the right of way? My recollection is when we took our straw poll, everyone, or no one had any problem with this waiver. Does anyone like to add anything to that? No, I guess not. Likewise, Martha, do you have any comments on that?
No, I mean, it's an existing condition, so.
Okay. And likewise, the roadway crown and the swale and street trees on both sides. Justification from the developer was road slopes in one direction to better manage stormwater runoff and fit existing topography, swale on one side, no street trees. Again, let me turn to the board members. Pete, any further thoughts on this?
Yeah, I've been thinking about street trees and I'm not sure why there wouldn't be any,
Okay, so maybe we need to rethink the street trees.
or a conversation about it. Yeah, thank you.
George, your thoughts?
No, thank you. I follow Peter.
Okay. Woody
I'm good with it.
and Mary?
All set, thanks.
Okay, so we might want to our developer, would you be comfortable with street trees?
Sure, whatever the board says. We have quite a few trees going throughout the whole property
Okay,
as it is, so adding a few more is no problem.
very good. Thank you.
So
And
that waiver could actually come off the waiver request could come off the list for the street trees.
yeah,
So, but what about,
Well,
again,
actually, there's some trees, I might take a picture. I think there's some pretty good trees next to that stone wall already. I forget, John, are they going up that driveway? Does Jerry Strazella have some nice trees there already? that are
I
on
think
his
that-
side?
I think there are a few trees along that edge. I think they're on his property.
Yeah, right against the wall, and they're pretty nice.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's really on the other side, maybe, on Peter Mack's side.
I believe so, yeah.
There's some woods there, but they might be kind of beat up. And as we go, we could put a couple street trees in each yard. We do that in some towns.
okay.
Yeah, bringing more greenery in would be very helpful, I think.
Well, you're gonna bring us back in a modified plan anyway, so maybe you can just add that.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
while we're on this one, I also do have a question about the slope. My reading of the plan, and again, if I'm incorrect, please correct me, but it looks like the road actually is crowned in that section where it comes in off of Orchard Street, and there's swales and infiltration trenches on both sides. So I think the swale on one side, is that farther up, or am I completely misreading the plans?
So I think we originally had it as a monoslope. We revised the plans to show the crown for the initial 250 feet or so. The cul-de-sac, however, is still sloped towards the center of the road. So this cul-de-sac will have a monoslope.
So by the cul-de-sac, you mean the turnaround?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so that's all sloping towards the center?
Yep.
Okay. So in writing that up, then that would need to be clarified, I guess.
Okay.
All right, and then just moving down, the justification for not having a sidewalk. And you've noted here that none exist on Orchard Street.
Yeah. Peter, do you have any issues with this?
If this was a larger street, I think I'm comfortable with this.
Yeah, George? Did we lose George?
No, he's muted.
George, you're muted.
I'm unmuted now. Okay, I have no comments or concerns about that.
Okay, Woody
I'm comfortable with it.
and Mary?
I'm fine with that. Thanks, Larry.
Okay. And lastly, trees. Have we covered that?
And we've covered that.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, but that gives me something to work with. Thank you.
All right, Martha, thank you. So as far as this, where are we now with the swept, to go back to the swept path analysis? So we're gonna, that's been submitted to the fire department?
That one has not. The previous one was, I hadn't gotten any feedback on that since this used the specs that had been provided by the fire department. I expect it would be fine, but I will submit it to them.
All right,
Just-
thank you. And I'm just thinking ahead. Let's see. So we'll need to have the common driveway documents still need to be reviewed, the HOA by town council and all of that. And I think the police chief also wanted to look at that stuff, didn't she, Martha?
Yes, she wants to review the common driveway agreement in particular, because it's an area where she sees a lot of conflicts and they get a lot of calls about common driveway issues.
So let me ask the developer and remind me where we are on that. Have you submitted final documents on those? Or are they just in draft form at this point?
They're in draft form.
I mean, are we ready to submit them, I guess would be a better question to town council or the chief, or we waiting for more on that? Anybody?
Sean,
Oh, yeah, I think we're still waiting to get those documents finalized.
Yeah, okay, so the sooner you can get those to us, the better.
Okay.
And I'm sure you don't want to hear this, but I suspect that we're going to be looking for an extension too on this. I don't see this coming together by August 1. But so I think where we're at now is we need to coordinate the site visit with Essex County Greenbelt. Martha's going to continue to work on the draft decision. And also we need to get those documents that we can submit to town council and the police chief for review. So everyone, we all on the same page on that?
Yes, and if I could, Larry, I know that this has been a longer process than probably the applicant would like. There's been some moving pieces that have been very, very interesting with this, especially with the incorporation of Essex Greenbelt, which is something that, of course, the board is very much in favor. So we want to make sure that they're comfortable so that that piece can be put into place. And that all of those things are aligned. It just will make the process more comprehensive and complete. So I appreciate your support and your patience through this process, even though I know it might be frustrating.
I appreciate
Thank you,
that.
Peter.
Trying to come up with a good plan, I know.
Yep. And I think it's in everyone's interest that we do that and get it done right.
Better now than
George,
later.
I'm sorry, Mary?
Oh, I just said better now than later.
Yeah. Thank you, Mary. George, anything further you'd like to add?
As a windup, I just want to go back to what Martha said about the easement between the parties to 168 and the developers. The estate and Ms. Kessler are the parties. And I think their counsel ought to review the agreement together and make a final form where they sign off that everything's acceptable to them. This easement is in perpetuity. That means we really have to be careful right now and not later, because later is not be changed anything. So I think that ought to be done sooner than later. And you have to keep in mind that because the planning board receives a copy of a proposed easement doesn't mean that we approve of it. It just means that we may accept it or may not accept it until it's signed off by the attorneys. Is that correct, Martha?
Well, for something like this, where it's really between two property owners.
Yeah.
Effective.
Yeah, but to George's point, I think George would just a letter from both attorneys that they're in agreement and be satisfactory.
That would be fine.
That would seem prudent. Yeah. Very good. And Woody, anything further?
No, I'm good. for now,
And
but-
Mary. Yeah.
Also, thank you.
I see Peter Mack's hand up, Martha.
Yes.
All right, I can't see anybody. Something wrong with my computer, but just for clarity purposes here, I've got no problem working with Mike with regards to property line issues. I cannot, again, see what's going on here with regards to the screen situation here, but if it's possible to pull up the Google Maps scenario again, and look at the opening of my driveway, you'll see a black Mercedes Sprinter van. And in front of that is a rock on the driveway. That's the actual property line on the street side for us here. If you go towards the back section of my home, about 35 feet off the back corner is the actual property line, or the boundary line, if you will. This is a very old photograph. The house doesn't look like this anymore, nor do we have half of those vehicles at the house. But regardless, at the street, you'll see a white rock right about where your arrow is right now. That
There?
would be, yeah, exactly. That would be the property line on the street side. If you cut back, you'll see a blue car in the driveway, and it's a little difficult to see this, but to the left of that blue car is where the line cuts through. So basically it slices that black van kind of in half on the diagonal, just for clarity purposes. This
I
way,
see.
we understand where the line actually runs. When we bought the house 12 years ago, this is the driveway we were presented with. So there's been no encroachment. We've just been using what we were given at the time. That said, Mike, if we have to have a conversation about, moving it or providing you with some more left to right boundary lines to provide you with a larger diameter coming into the road there, whether it be up the hill or down the hill, you and I can have a conversation about that with the engineer and move forward. I hope that might give Pete a little bit of resolve with regards to the approach coming up the hill, as well as coming down Orchard Street. Coming down Orchard Street, the entrance isn't that big of a deal. It's coming up the hill that it's somewhat of a blind corner, so I can see where his concern would be. Outside of that, losing this particular driveway for us, Mike and I have had a conversation regarding it in the past, and we don't necessarily have an issue with that. That would obviously help you all out with regards to making a decision. One less entrance as opposed to, 2 entrances as opposed to 3 is a little bit better. From a confusion perspective, guests entering, et cetera, that could be a problem. I could see where that would come up. And with regards to any sort of written easement stuff, we haven't received anything, but I'm certain Mike would come through with something for us to review in a rather timely manner. So maybe that'll help you all in your decision-making progress going forward. Outside of that, nothing else.
Good, thank you.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Okay, so I think we're probably ready to consider a continuance on both of these. As I indicated, I'm not going to be available on July 5th. That if you go forward on the 5th with the hearing, then you're going to only have 3 voting members. So that means, and you need 4 for the special permit. So I would suggest, if it's agreeable, July 19th for continued public hearing. Is that agreeable to the applicant?
Yeah, that's fine with us.
Okay. Then I would take them each in turn. I would entertain a motion to continue the public hearing on the definitive subdivision plan to July 19th, 2023 at 7:15 p.m. via Zoom. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
George, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Woody. Any discussion? Then hearing none. Peter, how do you vote?
Yes.
George, how do you vote?
Yes.
Woody, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Mary, as I said, you're not eligible to vote on this, but I assume you're in agreement?
Indeed.
Thank you, Mary. And as to the common driveway special permit, I would again entertain a motion to continue the public hearing on this to July 19th, 2023 at 7:15 p.m. via Zoom. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Woody. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, George. Any discussion? Hearing none. Peter, how do you vote?
Yes.
George, how do you vote?
Yes.
Woody, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mary, you okay?
Okay,
Okay, I vote yes as well. So thank you, everyone, for tonight. This has
Okay.
been very helpful, and we've got a lot of good information. So we appreciate it.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
thanks for your patience.
Okay, next item on the agenda is Lauren Kiesling from Merrimack Valley and Kayla Rennie. I hope I'm pronouncing both of your names correctly, from Merrimack Valley, going to talk to us about the housing production plan. So microphone is yours.
Great. Thank you so much all for having us in your space this evening. We do have a presentation prepared for you, so I will go ahead and share my screen as we do our introductions. But I am Lauren Kiesling. I'm a community planner with the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission, and I'm joined tonight by my colleague Kayla Rennie, a community economic development planner also with MVPC. So again, thank you all.
Welcome.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we can talk housing production plan together. Let me just go ahead and go full screen on here. Can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. So this evening, we're just going to be doing a brief overview of the Newbury Housing Production Plan update process and a small data dive, just looking at some key housing data points as it pertains to both Newbury's population and then also some housing tenure data points as well, really looking at the breakdown of renters and owners in Newbury and what their incomes look like as well. So just to kick us off, at MVPC, we have the privilege of conducting a comprehensive regional housing production plan update across each of our 15 cities and towns. This is in response to the 2018 version of pretty much the regional swath of housing production plans. We were able to do the first iteration of these plans in 2018. All but one community participated, and then again have the privilege of doing it again this time around for all 15. The housing production plans are on a 5-year cycle, so hence why we started this process in late 2022, and we'll be moving this process through June of 2024. So we're kind of right smack in the middle of what that process looks like, just about a year in at this point. So I'm going to go in, give a brief overview of what a housing production plan is, really why it's important for each of our communities. We'll be pausing briefly for questions, and then we can go into some data discussion if that sounds all right to folks. So to kick us off, what is a housing production plan? So a housing production plan is a community's proactive strategy for planning and developing affordable housing and housing of all types by creating a strategy to enable it to meet its affordable housing needs in a manner consistent with Chapter 40B statute and regulation. This is a movement that came out of the state in Chapter 40B. This is legislation from 1969, so it's been around for quite a while. And housing production plans, I believe, came on board close to 20 years ago at this point. And again, Newbury is already at the advantage of having an existing housing production plan. Again, the most recent iteration being that 2018 to 2022 plan. So why are housing production plans or HUPs important? Housing production plans allow communities to articulate their vision for housing production in a comprehensive planning format and identifying, and this is key, community-specific strategies to achieve said goals. So essentially what, we'll talk about the components of the plan as we move through the slides here, but just want to emphasize that even though we're doing this on a regional scale, really to achieve an economy of scale and be able to, allow communities to produce these plans at a much cheaper rate than if you were doing it with a private consultant. We also have the privilege of being your regional planning agency. So we're not only able to bring in the regional implications for, what the housing crisis has looked like across the region and the state, but also be able to drill down into community-specific interventions and strategies that will benefit Newbury as a whole. Housing production plans are a statutory requirement. Again, they are used as a tool to grant communities further control over 40B development. As a brief aside, really 40B developments are, developers are able to come in and essentially override existing zoning using comprehensive permitting as a tool to build affordable housing specifically. So if a developer comes in, they're looking to build a development of X amount of units, and they're looking to have about 20 to 25% affordability in those units, they are eligible. Again, we'll talk about some of the criteria as we move through, but they're eligible to kind of supersede some of the existing zoning ordinances that are in place, again, just to expedite the production of affordable housing. And that was really the state's, their whole rationale in introducing the 40B statute overall is to increase affordable housing across Massachusetts. HUPs are also a key component in helping communities move towards what's called safe harbor status. I do have a slide right after this, kind of moving through what safe harbor means. But again, it gives those communities the tools and the freedom to decide when and where development occurs. So it would give, in this case, Newbury, a little bit more leeway in what type of development happens and where it happens in Newbury. So what is safe harbor status? Here's your crash course here. Safe harbor refers to the conditions under which the Zoning Board of Appeals decision to deny a comprehensive permit. So again, if you're meeting certain criteria, essentially you are able to be to deny a comprehensive permit that's coming in under Chapter 40B to build a development that has that 25% affordability component. In other words, it's determined consistent with local needs. This is verbiage that you would see a lot more commonly than ZBA denying a comprehensive permit. So the decision to deny a comprehensive permit is upheld if one of these following have been achieved by the date of the project's application. I won't go into super detail here, but just to list them, subsidized housing inventory or SHI eligible units meet or exceed 10% of total housing units across Newbury. Sites of SHI eligible units comprise over 1.5% of the total land area zoned for residential, commercial, and industrial use. So kind of hitting that minimum 1.5% here. And then there also is a safe harbor point here of annual land area minimum. So essentially, if your construction is starting on sites comprising larger than 0.3% per year or 10 acres per year within the town, the project is too large. So essentially you can deny under those pretenses as well. What I want to point out here is what you'll commonly hear across our region, across our municipalities, is that most of our communities are striving to hit that 10% minimum. That is a state designated minimum. It doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, by having a minimum of 10% affordable units in Newbury, that it's meeting your needs specifically in the community. It is that kind of blanket requirement. But do want to point that out because a lot of communities, that is a priority in their housing production plan, and the strategies that we do select to be included in the plan and that are decided by the public, et cetera, are really geared towards reaching that 10% minimum. With that being said, there is another safe harbor mechanism in place, and that is having a state approved housing production plan and being granted certification of compliance. What this means is that you've gone through the housing production plan update process. In this case, right, you're moving through this update with us. We're submitting it to the state, in this case, EOHLC, formerly DHCD. They recently changed their name. They've not only granted approval, but Newbury has also shown that on a yearly basis, you are either producing 0.5% or 1.0% affordable units as it pertains to your total housing unit count. So on the bottom here in bold, you'll see that if you're producing 0.5% of your total housing stock as affordable units in accordance to your approved HVP, you get 1 year of safe harbor status. And if you have that 1.0%, you can reach that 2-year status. And again, I should pause here. I know this is a lot of information. We're going to be distributing these slides afterwards for your consideration. So we can continue this dialogue well after this meeting as well. So with all of that said, what does a housing production plan consist of? So the required elements, the statutory required elements here are a comprehensive housing needs assessment. We'll be getting a small taste of what that data looks like, but it's essentially going through, in this case, the 2020 census and American Community Survey, pulling out specific population and housing characteristics. So it's anything from Newbury's population growth over time, what those projections look like, age demographics, kind of what that distribution has looked like over time as well, housing tenure, what is your owner versus renter ratio, what is the amount, you know, what is your area median income, how does that match up against your median sale price, things of that nature, just to give an idea from a data perspective about what the housing landscape looks like in Newbury and where some of those gaps might be for existing residents. Number 2 here is housing development goals. This is really closely aligned with that 0.5 to 1.0% kind of per year schedule. The housing goals in an HVP are strictly numerical and that are, you know, they're complemented with these strategies, again, that we'll talk about in a little bit, that are more quantitative. And how are we going to reach these goals, these numeric goals, to, you know, break ground and create more affordable units in housing of all types throughout the town. Number 3 here, we do have asterisks kind of off here, is integration of the MBTA communities legislation. I'm sure folks in this room are somewhat familiar with it now, but it's essentially a state mandate that requires you to have one multifamily zoning district of about 15 units per acre around transit stops. Again, I know each of our 15 cities and towns in the Valley are considered an MBTA community. This is work that's kind of happening in conjunction with the HUP update here. But we integrated it here just because, again, they're happening on the same timeline, right? The road to compliance looks a lot like what our process timeline looks like for the HUP update. So we thought it just made intuitive sense to include it in this process as well. And then finally, implementation strategies. So again, how are you going to reach those numerical production goals as you move through the next 5 years? So in summary, at the end of the day, a robust housing production plan should consist of a targeted action plan, including prospective funding sources, step-by-step action plans, and identified persons, just so once the plan is published, you're able to move forward with implementation rather quickly. You already have your partners on board, et cetera. Housing production plans do act as the primary guidance documents to promote and facilitate housing production across the Merrimack Valley. Again, that's why we also feel that it makes sense to do this from a regional standpoint. So again, at the crux of it all, we're moving and creating housing regionally, but again, utilizing those targeted comprehensive action plans and strategy lists for each community to make that a reality. And last but not least, this effort is about planning for and centering efforts to increase affordable housing throughout the production of multiple types, right? So this can include not only affordable housing, but senior housing, multifamily housing, and starter homes as well. Again, as I mentioned before, and as I'm sure we're all very aware, we do have a pretty significant housing shortage throughout the Commonwealth, again, in our region as well. So it really is our responsibility from a regional perspective to each be doing our part in, creating housing that not only fits the character, but, is meeting the needs of specific communities throughout the region and subsequently throughout the Commonwealth. So just to look back really briefly on Newbury's 2018 plan, I did grab a few of your strategies from the previous plan just to acclimate folks. This is by no means all of them, but we did in the previous plan have each of the strategies bucketed into 3 different areas here: planning and policies, production and preservation. I'll give you a small sample just by reading one from each of these buckets here. And again, you'll see this on the back end so you can spend some more time with it. But under planning and policies here on the left, things including adopting an inclusionary zoning bylaw was included in the previous iteration of the plan, conducting ongoing community education around around housing data, housing issues in Newbury, just to get that critical mass. So when it comes time to make zoning decisions or larger decisions at town meeting, that the public is on board and aware of where Newbury stands in terms of housing status and production. Moving forward to the second column here in production, strategies including encouraging development of housing that is affordable to both low and moderate income households. In this case, those who earn between 60 and 120 of the area median income, again, is an example of what some of those production strategies can look like. And then lastly, here on the right, under preservation, considering converting abandoned structures into affordable housing as appropriate, converting single family homes into multi-unit for supportive services, right? These HPPs are definitely an opportunity to get creative around what some of these housing strategies can look like. But again, as I cannot emphasize enough, can be tailored specific to your community to be able to meet the various housing need across Newbury. So to talk about our process here at MVPC and kind of where you are all at in this process, we're following a 3-tiered kind of system here. So one being public engagement, as we're hoping to do throughout the entire process, information gathering, which is mainly pulling that census and ACS data to communicate that housing landscape, and then goal development, which is that numerical housing production goal chart, as well as the supplemental strategies for how we can make that a reality. We did kick off this process in October of 2022, and again, we are moving through June of 2024. We are supplemented with 2 state-funded grants that we were able to get from the MVPC side. So really, this process will wrap up when those 2 grant opportunities wrap up in June of 2024. So again, some communities might finish a little sooner. Some might, need some extra support kind of after the grants, expire there. But again, we're flexible from MVPC side to, whatever pace process works best for folks works for us. I will say, I think we have roughly 9 or 10 of our 15 communities are at the kind of the same stage that you are in this process, right? They have their stakeholder group together. We've been able to review some data. We might have been able to look at some priority development areas as well, but we are spending the summer kind of going back with that initial feedback to draft up some initial strategies before we look towards some community engagement opportunities we're considering for the late summer and fall as well. We did recently hire on a consulting group, the Consensus Building Institute, to help facilitate some of our regional and community specific community engagement opportunities. So you'll be hearing more about that throughout the summer as we coordinate that, but that will really be the crux of the work that's already happening internally. We're hoping to bring that back out to the public to make sure, one, that we're on the right track, seeing if we're missing any gaps here, and then, getting that final public approval before we move forward with the rest of the process. So here's a visual a little bit of what I was just communicating here. We're already past a review of your existing housing production goals. We were able to meet with Martha and Kristen to get an idea just of where Newbury's at, kind of what's a priority still, what's already been achieved, just to give us an idea of where you'd like to go in terms of your new strategies. But tonight, again, we'll be doing a brief census and ACS data overview. Then we'll be reviewing some of your priority development areas where you'll be able to physically map where you think affordable housing and then just housing in general should go across the town to guide future development, community engagement, development constraints analysis. A lot of this has to do with water capacity and sewer capacity. A lot of that will be carried over from the previous iteration of your plan. A lot of that likely hasn't changed in the last 5 years, but we're going to be looking back at what that is in case any new constraints have arisen since then. Following that is final strategy and action plan creation. And then the final 2 steps here are local adoption. So you will be seeing us again when the plan is coming to an end. We need to gain some local approval here before we send it off to EOHLC for final approval. So with all of that said, before I dive into some data briefly, do folks have any questions on the process or the HVP overall?
Peter.
No, but I would love to have questions at the end.
Sure.
Okay. George, do you want to hold the questions for now, or?
No questions, but thank you for your presentation.
Okay, Woody?
No questions at the moment, no.
Okay, and Mary?
At the end, yes, thank you.
Yeah, okay. All right, Lauren, why don't you forge ahead
Great.
then?
Sure, we'll keep trucking along. Thank you. Okay. So this first slide here is really just communicating population change over time. And again, I do want to emphasize that this is just an initial stab at what some of this data looks like. We will be doing a much larger profile in your final plan. But this is just kind of a taste of what we're looking at here. So the graph on the left is Newbury population projections through 2050. This was not curated by us. This is from the UMass Donahue Institute. Whenever a new census comes out, they kind of go back through their numbers and update it. So I will say that the data on the left is brand new, about a week has gone by since those numbers have been pulled. But as you can see, there is somewhat of a steady decline in population that's projected for Newbury. I will also say that we see this in the majority of our smaller towns across the region. And we are going to be looking into, some of the factors that go into, why those numbers might be decreasing at that rate. Just to give a small background, the Donahue Institute looks at town level fertility and mortality over the last 10 years. We look at regional migration by age and also county migration. So again, they're using an algorithm to kind of determine, these numbers as we move through. But definitely a consideration is that currently there is a projection of a slight decline in population, which is different from the last set of data that they provided us. The graph to the right here is just your 2010 through 2020 census and ACS data. This is what's actually happening on the ground. So in 2010, you had that 6,666 number. You had a slight increase of about roughly 200 folks in 2015. And then you just had followed by a slight decrease in 2020. And again, I apologize, it looks a lot more stark than it actually is. The scale is just by 50s here. But just wanted to show you kind of where you were at here. So you're kind of hanging out around in that upper 6,000 area for population here. For age distribution, The blue bar here represents 2011 through 2015, the American Community Survey, and the orange bar represents 2016 through 2020. And as you can see here, you've maintained pretty even age distribution throughout time. Most notably, your under 20 and your 50 to 64 age ranges have stayed pretty consistent, with some slight deviations in your 20 to 34 and 35 to 49 age groups. I will say that this doesn't do complete justice because it's grouped as 65 plus on the right-hand side here. We didn't further stratify it out to show your aging population. But again, overall, the age distribution has stayed relatively similar over the last 5 years. In terms of race and ethnicity, same kind of story here. Blue bar is 2010, orange is 2015, and gray is 2020. You've had, again, right, a population increase in general, and you've also seen your white population increase on the same rate there, with some notable increases really on the far right here of 2 or more races and your Latino population of any race as well. So you are seeing a slight increase in diversity over time, but do remain a majority white community at this juncture. In terms of housing tenure, so really just meaning who owns and who rents in Newbury, you have followed a pattern, again, that we've also seen really across the region over time. In 2010, you had a split of about 78% homeowners and 22% renters. Over time, you slowly saw that become more homeowners and less renters. So right, that 80 to 20, and then followed by that 2020 number, that 91 to 9%. So this could be an indication of rental units coming off the market, or rental units being converted into condominiums for ownership, right? This is other context that we'll gather kind of along the way here, but you are trending in that direction. Household income distribution. Again, it has varied over time. You do have some consistencies kind of in your lower income brackets on the left-hand side here. But I think what is most notable here is there was a pretty, you had a decent amount of population in 2010 in this 35,000 to 49,999 range here, that kind of middle income, if you will, that kind of vastly dropped off in that 2015 to 2020 timeframe as well. And then as you see with the other income brackets, you do see a pretty huge jump in that 150K or more section, notably in 2020, about 45% of your population is there. So again, this is, these are data that will gather more context about kind of what you're seeing on the ground, because the numbers don't tell the whole story. But there definitely has been a pretty significant wealth distribution change over time. And as we look at kind of what that wealth building looks like in terms of tenure, so whether folks own or rent, on the far right-hand side here, you can see the change in Newbury's median household income. Again, you have seen a pretty significant jump in 2020, but you've seen a similar trajectory both in your renter-occupied units and your owner-occupied. I would be remiss not to mention that, right, there is a significant wealth gap between those in owner-occupied housing units versus renter-occupied, as we can expect. But just something to keep in mind as we think about, housing production and whether we want to bring more rental units on the market, what that means for affordability, et cetera. So lastly, I just wanted to give a brief preamble about cost burden before we actually look at the data. So when we talk about household cost burden, what we're referring to is when a household is paying 30% or more of their monthly gross income on housing related needs. Housing costs include rent or mortgage payments, utilities, could include homeowners association fees and home insurance fees, again, if you're in an ownership situation. But those are all the factors that go into that 30%, right? And a household is considered severely cost burdened if those expenses are 50% or more of their monthly gross income as well. So really kind of best practice wise, we like to consider folks who are not cost burdened under that 30%. You've probably heard that rule before, that kind of rule of thirds there. But I just wanted to give some definitions before we actually look at our regional data here. We don't have this stratified out specifically for Newbury, but this kind of gives you an idea of what cost burden looks like across the region. I will note really briefly on the left-hand side here in renter households by cost burden, you see a lot of gray. This is data that either wasn't filled out in the American Community Survey, or these are folks who reported having no income at the time. The way that this question is asked is it's essentially asking people to break down or itemize what their monthly household costs look like. So by utilities, insurance, right, HOA fees, et cetera. So we do have some pretty significant gaps in this data at this point. But again, wanted to share it nonetheless, just to give you an idea of how not only prevalent cost burden is, but how prevalent severe cost burden is, as we're looking at that red line there. So I'll let you take that in for a moment. But, and again, we will be sharing this again and having subsequent conversations. But that wraps up our presentation this evening. Again, I know we moved through the data at lightning speed, so happy to take any questions about the process or the data. And again, thank you all for the time.
Thank you, Lauren. Yeah, there is a lot to take in here, isn't there?
Certainly.
Yeah. Pete, do you have any questions for Lauren? Did we lose Pete?
No, Pete, you're muted.
Oh.
Don't you love when you mute yourself and you just start talking? I think Lauren and Kayla, thanks very much for being with us this evening. You know, this is one of the things that we struggle with as a planning board, because we're trying every avenue possible to get affordable housing. And if you were to listen to our meetings and, you know, and hear our conversations, of course, you know, the 40B is the big thing, but we're trying to, you know, nibble at this a little bit at a time. And the way, you know, we try to have conversations with developers, and we say, hey, would you make one unit affordable? And, you know, it's so very difficult because there isn't an appetite for that. The motivations are very different than what we're talking about here this evening. It's very frustrating. You know, we have limited infrastructure, right? We don't have municipal water, we don't have municipal sewer. We have areas that can be developed in town that can't be developed in town. And you see how we struggle with just trying to make what's here, you know, affordable. And, you know, we oftentimes feel like our hands are more than tied. And if we had an inclusionary bylaw, that would definitely be very, very helpful. If there was a way to track our accessory apartment where we have this beautiful, you know, bylaw, which allows people to age in place. And so there's a supplemental income or a family member. And, you know, if that data could be tracked some way, but, you know, that's not, you know, reportable. So, you know, we're trying in our own ways to make it happen, while quite honestly, I feel like we're, you know, fighting, you know, uphill, you know, actually upstream, up a waterfall. A great big waterfall. And, you know, we don't have funding sources. If we had partners who could say, hey, listen, we'll do it. We could say, hey, we could probably grab some land for you. Let's do something collaborative, think outside the box. But those avenues, they don't exist. And so even when we try to be creative, it doesn't work. So it's not that we're not interested in doing it. We're trying to do it. And you can see that we do have this wealth gap disparity. And so when I look at the 2050 data that says we're going to have a 30% reduction in population, I don't buy it, because I think people are going to want in communities like this that can afford to live in communities like this. So I think that those numbers might skew differently, and we might turn into a community that is very high end. And, you know, so there's a lot of great discussions we should have in the future. I thank you so much for being here and for speaking with us this evening. Thanks.
Thank you, Pete. I know this is, you've been very passionate about this for as long as I've known you, and we appreciate that. George, anything you'd like to add?
No, thank you. I'm good.
Woody?
Just that it was a great presentation. You gave us a lot to think about, and look forward to hearing more in the future. And thank you.
Yeah,
No
and
question.
Mary? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's a lot of, it's like TMI, too much information.
There's a lot to take in,
Yeah.
that's
And
for sure.
all I
But,
can say is, just bouncing off Pete's comment, we're dealing with the greenback boogie here. We're trying really hard, but we're all dancing to the mighty dollar's tune, I think, in a lot of ways, and that's just my opinion. But we are always fighting the good fight, we like to think, to the benefit of our town. But, you know, we have a lot of competition for the dollars and the land and the housing. But thank you so much, Lauren. It was tremendous. Thank you.
yeah, thank you both. That was great. A lot of good information, a lot to take in. You said you'd make the slides available
Yeah.
to
Yep,
us.
I'll
That'd
share them
be
with
great.
Martha to be sent out. And yeah, I just want to emphasize, again, this is kind of step one to this larger process here and engaging this group. And we're looking forward to, identifying strategies that can allow folks to think outside the box a little bit and, make some dents in affordable housing in areas where it might seem a little bit more difficult. So thank you again for the time.
Well,
I look forward to the process ahead.
I'm very glad you're on in our corner. So,
Yep.
Martha, I do see a hand up. We'll maybe take just some brief questions.
Yeah,
Look.
Meg Alponi and Pam Wool have a question. So if you guys, yeah, there you go.
Hi, this is Pam Wool. I have a question and a statement. One is, you mentioned a stakeholder group that something happened with that. What's the story, the situation with that?
Sure. So some of our other communities are moving forward with kind of internal stakeholder groups. In the case of Newbury, we're mainly working with Martha and Kristen and then utilizing the planning board kind of as that main group. Martha, I defer to you if you want to add anything else about that structure.
Right, we've also asked Cindy Courier, who's on with us tonight, who's the director of the Council on Aging, to participate as she is able. And we're going to, as we go through the process, bring in other specific stakeholders who might have interest. Evelyn Noyes is also on. She's the manager for two of our elderly housing complexes in Byfield. So, and I had asked all of them to be here tonight, knowing that you were going to be covering some of this stuff. So we'll be reaching out to others as we go forward.
So it seems like having just plain old community representation of people who are interested and might have had a history of working within the community would be a component that I hope you're planning to include in the stakeholders group? Question mark?
Yeah,
I would
certainly.
say- Go ahead.
Yep. No, I would say definitely. And there are going to be some opportunities for public engagement as well. And we certainly would be looking for participation in those.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Nice. Anyone else? I see one more hand, Martha. And then I
Yeah.
think we'll need to wrap this up soon, but
Yeah.
Yeah, Christina Hoffman.
Really quickly, thanks so much for the presentation. Really appreciate it. I wondered if the housing production plan, the previous version that's going to be updated, is posted on the website. I haven't looked extensively, but I was just clipping through the planning board's website and I didn't see it, but there might be a link buried in there that I'm not seeing.
We'll make sure that it is if it's not there now. It's available through the, excuse me, on MVPC's website as well, but we'll make sure that we've got that link.
Yeah,
Okay,
I might be
great.
able to- I might be able to throw it in the chat for you really quickly if my computer will cooperate with me.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, it actually is on the website. If you go over, if you open up the planning board's website, and you'll see over on the left-hand side, a box that says planning for housing. And if you open up that, you'll see a link to the MVPC regional housing plan and the Newbury specific housing plan.
Got it. I found it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
okay. Well, again, that's great. We appreciate your time and all of the work you put into this, and thank you.
Great. Likewise. Thanks so much, folks. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
Okay, I think moving on, and next item on the agenda under old business is 7 Larkin Road, Sam Colombo Millennium Engineering and Coughlin Shea Professional Builders LLP to follow up a discussion of plan options for proposed residential subdivision at 7 Larkin Road. You guys have been before us before, and I understand you have a new proposal for us to look at. So
Yeah, that's correct. This is Sam Colombo speaking. Like you said, I'm also here with Chris Coughlin as well as Mike Shea.
Hello.
Let me pull up these plans quickly. All right, is everyone able to see this?
Yeah.
Perfect. Before we jump into this, I just wanted to give a quick recap on the previous meeting we had. We had presented two concepts to the planning board, one of which was a 5-lot definitive subdivision. The other was an open space residential development. We do understand that the OSRD was a bit of a non-starter as we were unable to provide a waiver-free yield plan. And that was due to our proposed roadway length and the width of our right-of-way through an existing easement, which is coming off of Larkin Road here. It's an existing access easement to 7 Larkin Road. However, we did come away with like 2 major points from our discussion there. One of which was open space was encouraged for sure by, I think, the whole planning board. The other was the board had expressed the need for more affordable housing in the town of Newbury. With that in mind, the plan shown before you tonight is sort of our attempt to provide both of those. I'm actually going to switch to the next slide. I think it just gives us a better picture here. So we're proposing a 6-lot definitive subdivision. Each lot contains a duplex. That would be 12 units total, all of which would be affordable units. The roadway layout didn't change at all from the previous 2 concepts. The proposed road is 1,273 feet. It's 25 feet wide. The first 696 feet of the road travels through this existing 50-foot wide easement. Once you access 7 Larkin here, it would change to a standard 53-foot right of way, and that's what the remaining 577 feet would travel through to a conventional cul-de-sac, which I believe is 140 feet in outside diameter. Each lot would be serviced by a common septic. Let me zoom in here. We show one large common septic up here. However, we haven't gotten too far into our design at this point. We have set ourselves up to potentially do several smaller common septics, and we have some good testing in this area, as well as here and up here. That would sort of be decided later if we're at a point where we're going to move forward with a full design. The applicant would also like to implement what is shown in this dashed green line, a conservation easement, which would grant approximately 18.5 acres to the town of Newbury. That's shown in this sort of gray hatch here. And in addition to that, they would provide parking up in this area next to the common septic, as well as an easement for trail access to the back land out here. All this being said, we understand we'd still need to be granted waivers for the roadway length as well as the right-of-way width through the existing easement up here. We'd certainly like to hear some feedback from the board on that matter. And if it's something, the board would consider, we'd definitely like to move forward with a full design. Mike or Chris, is there anything you'd like to add before we sort of open this up for a discussion?
Yeah, I think that kind of last minute findings is that to make this a scenario where we can provide affordable housing, it would have to be half of the units would be affordable and the other half would be standard price townhouses. Just the cost of the road in and of itself is not economically viable for anybody to do that. We are fully supportive of the idea of the affordable housing, and based on kind of the last Lauren's take on the town and the need for it, and some of the comments made by the board. You know, it sounds like you folks are all for the idea of giving some sort of affordable housing to the town. We're happy to provide it, but we have to, it can't be all of it because it wouldn't work for us. In any scenario, it would be a loss for us. So this would be something that we'd be doing, you know, a standard townhouse with an affordable one in conjunction with that and a one-to-one. And, you know, hopefully that in and of itself gives the town, you know, a little bit more affordable housing for people, and gives people that are not necessarily looking for a full house somewhere to live as well. And kind of speaking to Lauren's take on what those demographics look like in terms of you know, percentage of income to mortgage prices and what have you. It seems like a pretty good quid pro quo on that. So that's basically our idea. Is in our view, you know, we're trying to give as much as we can to the town and the townspeople to use the property. We're trying to alleviate some of the need for affordable housing. And obviously on our end, we're trying to make something economically viable for us. I don't really know if there's anywhere to go other than this. You know, 27 acres of land is kind of landlocked until somebody can unlock it with a neighbor's property at some point, and probably do whatever they want with it at some point, provided they can get the road to open up onto a different road or kind of skirt those bylaws. So in theory, you know, it seems like a good deal all around for now. It potentially could get very ugly if someone purchased an adjoining piece of property potentially and wanted to take this to the next step down the road, if they could ever get that. That's kind of the way that it all pans out, it seems like.
Okay, so just if I understand, the only two waivers that you would feel you would need would be the length of the cul-de-sac and the width for a portion of the access.
The width is kind of more of a typo, it seems like. I think you require 53 feet, and in the easement it says 50 feet. I don't know if it was just a simple, you know, kind of miscommunication in an oddly written easement back in the day. But yes, that essentially it's 3 feet, if I'm not mistaken on that. Sam, you can correct me on that if I'm wrong.
That's correct.
And then it's the general the length of the road. And you know, the 3 foot easement seems like it's more of someone wasn't paying attention when they wrote 50 to 53, because the wording of it clearly states road. So that is kind of an anomaly. And then obviously the length is the bigger one, in which we're trying to do everything we can to provide parking for the town and something for multiple people to enjoy, right? You can enjoy the river walk, and you can and you know, 6 people can get into the town at an affordable price.
So but are there existing trails out there now?
We walked out there probably about a year ago, Martha. I not necessarily trails, but we're happy to provide trail access. And I tried to get in touch with Essex Greenbelt and see if they had any interest in kind of forming some trails, but it didn't really go that far. I don't know if it's something that the town could maybe put something together and, you know, maybe make it a club where they could go out there and kind of blaze some paths down there and give themselves some views. It's gorgeous back there. And, you know, quite honestly, if it's not going to really be used if it's not used by somebody at the end of the day. And you know, it's better to be used by the town than by 5 or 6 people or 10 people living in this neighborhood, I think.
Okay, and among other things, would probably be looking for an environmental analysis. You're okay with that?
I don't see a problem with that.
All right, let me turn to the board members. Pete, do you have anything?
Mike and Chris, I'm encouraged by this position of wanting to make 50% of these units affordable. That's something that, as you heard, we're very much interested in doing. That is in the public interest. That is in our community's best interest, and how that's designed, I think, is a good discussion to continue forward with. And I'm not sure if you have an idea of what that number looks like for what your concept of affordable is versus the state's mandate.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation, right? With building costs and you know, what does someone's mortgage look like in an affordable scenario with rates and things like that. So I know that's kind of an open-ended question, and I don't necessarily know if I can tell you a dollar value on that. I will say this, that if 50% or close to 50% is something that, you know, you folks think is a great number and we can make it work, I think for us, if we could find a way to make something attractive and maybe lessen the cost of the smaller units and make larger units for other people, you know, I think it allows us to build at the lowest possible number where it's viable for everybody. I'm not trying to be obtuse about it. I just can't, I don't know a number right now that I could say that would make sense. I think we'd have to be able to look at an analysis of all the condominium costs and say, okay, or townhouses, okay, does this make sense as a total package? And you know, we're certainly willing to do spreadsheets on that to present to the town, where we can all come up with a number that I think we can agree on that is affordable, and maybe that becomes a multi-tiered affordable in some scenario. I'm just throwing that out there, but we're certainly willing to have an open discussion and a circular one with you folks to see, you know, what numbers make sense. And if you have a number for us, you know, we'd love to hear it. I mean, obviously, you know, square footage and building costs and things like that aren't always the same. So if there's a number value we need to get to, we could tailor potentially to that in a size, and we will do our best to make some version of it on the other end with the other townhouses.
So what I might suggest, Chris, if I could, is, you know, probably have conversations with Martha and Kristen, just so that they can let you know, where we are with, state requirements and all that sort of stuff for affordable. And, these would be deed restricted units then, to be able to actually be able to, put into this equation, because that's one of the requirements to meet a threshold of affordable housing and for it to be recognized as such. So there'll be certain things that, would be necessary. So I think these are great conversations to have with staff so that they can help, with you in a manner that would be productive. So I'm glad that we're having this type of conversation. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you.
Pete, I'd just like to point out, in my research on this, and just to give you some background, right? Chris and I are custom builders. We've been in business for well over 2 decades, building custom homes, renovations, remodels for people. And we built a number of homes, single family homes along the way. And this is kind of our first attempt at doing this. And the way that it came about is there's a local guy who's in his late 60s, and he mows lawns for a living, and he really wants to retire. And he was hoping that this land was going to be his retirement. And so I met him, and we've been trying, Chris and I have been working with him for over 2 years to try and figure out a way to do something with this land so the guy can retire. The long and short of it is, we need to try and find a way to make this work for everybody. The town, for Chris and I, and for this guy Alan. So, we want, from what our research has told us, there is no definition of affordable housing in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. There is a definition of low income housing, and that falls under the 40B statute. I think affordable housing, where you're saying, hey, we want a place for people to age in place, or municipal workers to buy a property, or for people to come back to the town that they grew up in to buy their first home. That is what I am envisioning as an affordable piece of property in Newbury, because as we all know, it doesn't exist. I live in Amesbury, Chris lives in Hamilton. Those properties don't exist almost anywhere up here. So, Pete, I just want to get a clarification from you, because Martha and I have already had a conversation, and neither one of us could really come up with a definition of what an affordable house was. Obviously, there's plenty of definitions when you start going down into a 40B development. But I don't think that's where Chris and I, that's where currently that's not where our mindset is. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, Pete, and the rest of the board on are we talking about a 40B development, or just something that we could all come to agreement with that is a benefit to the town? Or is it simply, hey, you guys need, and we just saw all the numbers, do we need to make those numbers work? Because we'll do that. We'll do whatever makes the most sense for the town and for the guy who owns the land. We want to help out everybody.
Well, Larry, if I could continue.
Sure, please.
I think there's a couple components here. One is, the land itself, and preserving the land for what it is, and making sure that what we're going to be doing is appropriate for the mature forest that is there, for the natural habitat. That's one piece. So that's one. The second piece is the benefit to the community. Right, the benefit to the community. This community has a need. We have a direction from the state that we're trying to, meet these requirements, of affordability as defined by the state. These aren't our numbers of affordability; they're state numbers driven of affordability, and they're known. They're equations, and they're done by. I don't want to say counties, but by regional areas. And so that's where, if we're going to be using the term affordable, okay, from a planning board perspective, and I think we want to be talking apples and apples, not apples and oranges or tangerines. It might be affordable, instead of a $2 million house, it's a $750,000 house. A $750,000 house isn't an affordable home. A $350,000 home might be an affordable home. A $450,000 home might be affordable home. There's different parameters and different striations. And I think that's why conversations with staff to help guide this conversation, so that if you come back to the board and you say the word affordable, our understanding of affordable is what we're going to be. Your understanding of affordable will match our understanding of affordable, which will then allow us to put this into our inventory. Because, that's one of the things ideally we would like to do, because our inventory is very, very low in this community for a number of reasons. And so if there's a way that we can, get down this path, and then if you find you crunch the numbers, you say, geez, maybe we can't do that number, because that number is not, we have to look at this number. But we want to be realistic on both ends of this equation.
Can I ask a question? If Newbury had its druthers based on Lauren's presentation, townhomes versus a true 40B where every fourth house was an affordable house, and it was, and the zoning were able to be, changed to allow for more. Is that more beneficial to the town of Newbury than 6 and 6? I mean, if you could get, I'm just throwing numbers out there, don't hold me to any of this, but if you could get 20 houses in there and put, 6 truly affordable houses, small houses in there, and I'm just throwing numbers out there, is that something the town wants to see more or not? Or do they want something smaller and more confined? And, Pete, to your point, the preservation of that beautiful, forest and all that is paramount. But if the zoning sizes were changed and a true, 40B, a true 40B could be put in, does that give the town of Newbury potentially more houses and potentially more affordable than maybe just 6? And I'm just throwing this out there as part of a circular discussion that we're completely open to anything and everything that you folks have to say to us, and we'll put it together and try to brainstorm something that works. And we're interested in obviously our business, but we're also we have a commitment to do the right thing as well. So we want to know what you folks would like to see the most.
So let me just bounce back. If we had, if your scenario is you're saying, okay, if there's 20, typical 40B, if there's 20 units, 20% of them, 25% of them, 5 units are affordable. Okay. Now we look at your scenario. You're saying you're gonna have 12 units, you're gonna have 6 of those affordable. Now, would those be really the threshold affordable? Probably not. But, of your 6, okay, if 3 of them, of your 12, if 4 of them were truly affordable, we're getting to very close to the same threshold without the density.
Understood. Right. And I suppose it all comes down to how do you design a neighborhood that someone is willing to pay full price for the good one and understand that, there's other economic, thresholds within the neighborhood and make it work for everybody is really what it comes down to. And, here in Hamilton and Wenham, the town next door, there's a neighborhood that they did a great job with. So the houses that are the affordable ones are, they don't have as much trim and they're slightly smaller but they fit in. They don't look. No one's being cited out as being the affordable house unless you're willing to look close or closer. So I guess on our end of things is a freestanding smaller home better than a townhome if you can have a larger home in the same neighborhood. And again, I'm just kind of thinking out loud and, is a townhome more attractive to a younger buyer where they're not necessarily, into doing all the other things or an older buyer for that matter, where they can't necessarily keep up their properties.
And I think that you're raising really good points. And I think, this is where maybe a discussion with staff to, kind of get a feel to bounce around different concepts would be very, very helpful.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate that. Thank you.
So I just have one last question, just for my clarification. Is the only way to help you guys meet your goals, I'll call them affordable housing goals, is the only way to go through Chapter 40B of Massachusetts General Law? It's not just like, hey, Chris and I will build a bunch of $500,000 condos that in your town by all means would be affordable. But that doesn't check any boxes for you guys, right? You can't go to the state and say, hey, listen, we just put in 12 affordable townhomes
6
because they weren't done under Chapter 40B. Is that an accurate statement? And I'm learning as I go.
Let me defer. Martha, do you know the answer to that question?
And there is a local sort of a friendly 40B process, local initiative program. I think if we were to count these, and there are a couple different things. I'm thinking about a lot of things. One thing kind of going back to the discussion about townhomes versus freestanding single family homes or whatever. I mean, we're really looking right now for housing diversity as well as, sort of pure affordability. Most of our housing is single family homes. Having a broader diversity of houses would be terrific. My understanding is that if we want dwelling units to be included on our subsidized housing inventory, they need to be deed restricted and then they can count towards our 10%.
Would there ever be a way, and I'm asking just out of curiosity, if there were a way to, is there a potential for adding more housing back there if we can do it in such a way where there's like an A, B, and a C tier, and truly try to give that A tier, a B tier, and a full price tier, but make it all a cohesive neighborhood? And obviously, the lower the price goes, I think the more you'd have to be able to pack the density, but still keep it working from from the perks and everything else from that perspective, but truly try to almost make a unique scenario where you've got A, B, and C's, and they're all units and they work symbiotically together. And I'm just asking, I don't know if we can only do this 6, or could we, if we had it, way to deal with the town, and we could get 18 in there and give something more, but still make it attractive for everybody. And that means everybody across the board.
I think you're tapping into what, mixed use, not mixed use, but Martha, help me with the term. I am slipping because I'm getting tired.
Right, well, the MBTA communities, multifamily zoning.
Right.
Right now, we don't really have that mechanism. We've got our subdivision rules and regs, and then, that allows certain things under zoning. We've got OSRD, and we've already talked about the fact that you don't have a waiver-free yield plan, so that's not a route that's viable. The MBTA communities, multifamily zoning, which is looking for us to have, 15 units per acre, will be, potentially a mechanism that could be applied. I will say, quite honestly, this wasn't a parcel that we had thought to sort of identify as being appropriate for that, because it's not, it's not transit oriented, or it's not exactly, it's close to the highway, but it might be something to consider. But that's down the road, at the earliest that zoning would be in place, maybe next year. That's what we're targeting. So right now, to answer your question, we don't really have a mechanism outside of what's on the books.
Does that mean, right, does that mean that in theory it could be presented, or does that mean it would be useless to even present it because it would go nowhere without an actual bylaw on it?
What I guess the question is, what is the timetable on your end?
Well,
2 years ago.
Yeah, we need to make our mind up potentially by the end of the year on whether this is a project that is viable for us. If that MBA community were going to be on the books next year, and we could work in conjunction with you folks to come up with something that looks great for the community and makes economic sense, and we said, okay, well, maybe we could get all the red tape out of the way, and once it gets on the books, maybe we could get into a mid to late next year start. I mean, it's certainly, that wouldn't be a killer for us, as long as, if we feel like we're pulling in the same direction as you folks, and everybody wants a common goal, and we all feel like we're doing the right thing, we want to do that. And, quite honestly, we're in business to do business, but we also, if there's something that makes this better for everybody, and it's a win for you folks, then I think it's a win for everybody.
Well, it makes sense because the parcel otherwise has limited use.
Agreed.
Okay, so to get creative is beneficial. Now, Martha, I have to ask you a question. If we had a deeded restriction on an accessory apartment, would that help go to our pools, our numbers?
My understanding is that it would.
So we have a unique situation in this town. We have an accessory apartment bylaw which promotes, creating accessory apartments, whether attached to a home or separate, to allow this concept of aging in place, to have secondary income for the primary home, to have your young family live there for a while. And that might be something else. That's another potential, avenue, possibly. But I think, more conversations, with Martha and Kristen to talk about, what so we have a number, we have an idea what the options are. So that
I think on our end, I think that if we could make a request, it would just be that if everybody could be as open-minded as possible in a way that we can all potentially see a goal and work towards it in the short term, it would certainly be helpful for Mike and I to formulate plans and work numbers and see what actually works, so that we're not just talking, at these meetings. Maybe we can have an internal discussion on what makes sense and what avenues you folks like to see, and what makes sense economically and from a viability standpoint, and what loopholes are available, and if time is is something that is in the favor of development later, then how do we get to that time and with, something that is theoretically gonna work, when it gets on the book. So, for us, we're always open for a meeting, and we welcome the viewpoints of everybody so that we can understand what direction to pull in the hardest.
Yeah, and to Mike, to your comment about your friend who's doing the lawn cutting, who wants to have the best retirement package possible with the property. This is good conversation, quite honestly, because otherwise his options are
It's virtually
Well,
nothing.
the land has been in his family for generations. They've been, Newbury residents for generations, and he always just figured, hey, this is my ticket out. And he tried to sell it and realized he couldn't. And Chris and I got involved, and we met him through circumstances, and we said, hey, let's try and get creative and see what we can do, and help you out. And it's been 2 years, but we're willing to keep going. So.
Well, I'll tell you, you're the first applicants to come before us to have this type of an open conversation, to say, that we might like to explore something like this that could work for everyone. Because applicants come to us and they have a plan, and they have their numbers that they want to achieve, and they tell us what a road's going to cost, and they tell us how things are cost prohibitive, and they tell us all the reasons why we can't make a single unit affordable in a new construction project.
And I do understand that, like you guys mentioned with the last presenter, you're always fighting the almighty dollar. But I think we have an opportunity here because we can work with the landowner and you guys, and we can strike a deal that works for everybody and makes everybody happy.
Good conversation from my perspective. Larry, I have hogged the floor too much.
Oh, no, that's, as you say, it was a good conversation, Pete. Thank you. Let me turn to George. George, anything you'd like to add to what's been said?
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for bringing to the table a concept which would include affordable housing and a nice development. And I follow up on Peter's words that, again, thank you very much. And I look forward to the conversations with the town, and we'll see more of you, I hope.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Woody, anything you'd like to add?
Just ditto on everything that's been said by George and Peter. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Terrific.
I'll leave it at that.
Well,
And
thank you,
Mary.
everybody.
Yeah, thank you all for your time. I know it's late, but we appreciate it.
Okay. Oh, I hope this was helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you very
Absolutely.
much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mary.
Martha, we will be in touch.
All right.
Okay.
Mary, did you have anything you want to add?
You guys are too good to be true.
You've been talking to my wife.
That's high praise right
This
there.
dream, It's like, wow, somebody's gonna do the right thing. Yikes.
Okay. All right. Thanks,
We will
guys.
try our best. Thank you very much.
Take care,
Thank you,
everyone.
everybody.
Take care.
Good night.
Okay. Thanks, Pete, for actually leading that discussion. That was very helpful. On to new business, reorganization. So we have that on the agenda. As you know, I'm currently the chair, Pete's vice chair, and Woody's the clerk. I am perfectly willing to stay on as chair if that's the will of the board, but I didn't want to be presumptuous. So I don't know if anyone else has any interest in the job. No.
Ooh, just fell asleep. No,
Wake up, Mary.
we love you, Larry. We want you to
Thank you.
stay.
Well, like I said, I didn't want to be presumptuous. If everyone's I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, we're not. You're not being presumptuous.
If everyone is content with the current arrangement, then I don't think we need a motion on that, Martha, do we?
We probably should to formalize it.
All right. Well, would anyone like to, we can probably just nominate a slate if anyone would like to make that nomination.
So move.
Okay,
I
so,
make a motion that we leave the board the way it is now.
okay, so myself as chair, Pete as vice chair, and Woody as clerk. Any further discussion? Then Pete, how do you vote?
Yes.
Did we
George,
have
how
a
do you-
second on that? I'm sorry. Did
Oh,
we have a
sorry.
second?
We have a
Yeah, I
second.
second that motion.
George seconds. Thank you, Martha and George. So Pete, how do you vote?
I'm gonna change my, no, yes.
Okay. And George, how do you vote?
Yes.
Woody, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mary, how do you vote?
Very happy, yes.
Thank you, Mary, and I vote yes as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
So
guys.
next item, thank you all. Designation of authorized signatories, primary signatory and alternative for A&R plans, invoices and payroll. And currently it is the chair as the primary and the vice chair as the alternate. Mike, I would, unless there are any other suggestions, I'd entertain a motion that the chair remain the primary signatory and vice chair as alternate for A&R plans, invoices, and payroll.
So moved.
Thank you, George. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Woody. Any discussion? Hearing none. Peter, how do you vote?
Yes.
George, how do you vote?
Yes.
Woody, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mary, how do you vote?
Yes,
I vote yes as well. And Martha, I should have asked if that motion was in a satisfactory form for you. Since you didn't
Yeah.
correct me, I assume it is. Okay.
Yes, and there is, we will actually have to provide a signed sheet to the accountant to that effect, so I'll prepare that for.
That has to be done every fiscal year.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
interesting.
All right. Oh, and liaison positions. So Woody, congratulations on your appointment to the Conservation Commission. It's not strictly speaking a liaison, but best of luck with that. And I am the liaison to the ZBA, and it's getting late. And who else is liaison?
And we no longer have a.
Oh, we don't have a for the select board. We have a, oh, and Martha, okay. I'm sorry, it's a little past my bedtime. So do we need a liaison to the select board, Martha? You
No,
usually attend the meetings.
You know, I usually attend the meetings. I'm happy to report back on anything that seems, of interest to the board.
Okay, and I'm a liaison to the ZBA, and I'm happy to continue in that capacity unless someone else wants the job.
No.
Okay. And Conservation Commission, of course, we have Woody. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little punch drunk here. And MVPC is Martha. So do we need a motion, Martha? You want a
I'll make a
motion?
motion that we accept this slate.
Thank you, Peter. That's wonderful. Is there a second?
Oh,
Second.
I heard a number of voices. I don't know who got the second.
Yeah, I
But,
think it was Mary. I'm not, and it's really a very informal position. I'm not sure that it really requires a vote, but.
Okay, fair enough. We'll stay with the current positions and leave it at that. Now, I know you're all been looking forward to the financial report, which I gotta read because they tell me I gotta read it. And I will if I can find it. Oh, dear.
I think Pete may have it.
Now I put it right where I couldn't lose it. Here it is. I got it. Okay, the financial report for May of 2023, payroll warrants for planning director and assistant planner, PR 23-23 for the pay period ending 5/6/23, PR 23-24 for the pay period ending 5/20/2023. Planning board expenses, Verizon Wireless, Planning Board iPad, 5/24/2023. In escrow accounts for Joe Sawetka Engineering Peer Review for 136 Main Street, Borrego Solar on 5/20, dated 5/22/23. And also to Joseph Swager for engineering peer review for the Governor's Academy, 5/30/2023. Okay, planning director's report. Let's motor through this stuff, folks, so we can get out of here.
Yeah, I'm going to make this very short. The only thing I did want to say is that going back to MBTA communities, the scope of work for Merrimack Valley Planning Commission has been approved both by Mass Housing Partnership and also has been signed by Tracy. So we're going to have our kickoff meeting with MVPC on that next Monday. So their suggestion is to work initially with staff and then to come back and bring the board into it. So if that sounds reasonable, we'll be moving forward with that.
Okay, good. Is that it?
And that's enough for tonight, I think.
Okay. All right, liaison reports, select board, Martha?
So the last select board meeting, excuse me, on the 13th, excuse me, sorry. They did make a number of fiscal year 24 appointments for various boards and committees. They have more to do. One of the things I think that Steve may have wanted to bring up, there was a discussion, the Sunset, and this is relevant to the board, the Sunset Club did apply for a renewal of their entertainment license. And there were some neighbor concerns about that. Apparently the decibel levels have been pretty high. So the board voted to table that, and we'll be bringing that up at their meeting on the 27th. The other thing at the Sunset Club, and this wasn't brought up then, but has been brought up previously when we were talking about the tent, is they did put that additional structure on the property, and Steve may have wanted to mention that as well for their retail. And I know Peter Burnett, our building commissioner, has been in touch with the applicant, and that's still something that needs to come before the board as a modification to the site, approved site plan. And those were the major things. Tracy announced a couple of Chief Janvrin's retirement. You may have seen that in the paper. So those are the highlights.
All right, thanks, Martha. ZBA 15 seconds. They actually didn't have a regular meeting this month. They did have a special meeting last night just to finalize a decision that was previously voted on 6 Olga Way, and their next meeting is on July 20th. And that's all I have. Woody, anything from the conservation?
Well, it's still on Peter, but no, nothing. I have nothing to report on conservation. I'll do a better job next month.
Oh, actually, come to think of it, is your appointment is effective July 1?
Yeah.
July 1st.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. MVPC, Martha?
Commissioners meeting was last week. It was pretty mostly business. It was their last meeting until September. They did vote to approve the hiring of somebody for their transportation program. So I think that gets them up to speed. And the planners meetings tomorrow.
Great, thank you. And the last item on the agenda are the June 7th, 2023 meeting minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to review those?
Can we read those out loud, Larry?
I'm sorry,
Can we read those out loud now?
the whole thing?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Shoot
sure.
them nuts.
No.
I will have to say-
No.
Do-
I will have to say I did not review.
All right, you want to put those over to the next meeting then?
Yes.
Okay, so ordered
Immediate.
right now. That, all of that said, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. No, anybody?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, George. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thanks, Woody. No discussion, I'm sure. Peter, how do you vote?
I guess so.
George, how do you vote?
Thankfully, yes.
Woody, how do you vote?
Yes, and good night, everyone.
Mary, how do you vote?
Echoing George. Thankfully. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
I vote yes as well. Thank you all.
Thank you, Martha. Thank you,
Thanks a
Chris.
lot, you guys.